This is Heart of the Guardians. Real stories that remind us of compassion, second chances, and the quiet strength of the human heart. If you believe that kindness can change the world, then stay with us till the end of this story. It was a cold November evening when James Parker, a single father of two, found himself standing in line at the local grocery store. His arms were full of bread, milk, a few apples, and a small box of cereal, his son's favorite. He was exhausted, his shirt slightly wrinkled, and his face showed the marks of another long workday. Life hadn't been easy for James since his wife, Laura, passed away 3 years earlier. Cancer took her away too soon, leaving James to raise 7-year-old Emma and 5-year-old Noah on his own. He worked double shifts as a mechanic, trying to keep food on the table and smiles on his children's faces. That evening, as the fluorescent lights buzzed softly above him, James noticed the young cashier at the counter. She looked nervous, her hands trembled as she scanned items for the customer ahead. A few coins slipped from her fingers, clattering on the counter. She apologized quietly, but the customer just frowned and walked away. James moved closer in line. The young woman forced a small smile, but her eyes looked tired, haunted even. Something about her reminded him of his late wife. There was that same quiet kindness, the same way of hiding pain behind a polite smile. When it was finally his turn, he set his groceries on the counter. The cashier began scanning, but her hands shook so badly that she dropped a can of soup. James bent down to pick it up. "Rough day?" he asked softly. She gave a nervous laugh. "You could say that." Her name tag read Rachel. She couldn't have been older than 22. As she finished scanning, James handed her a few bills. That's when he noticed her hands again, pale, trembling, with small cuts near the knuckles. "Hey," he said gently, "are you okay? Your hands are shaking pretty bad." Rachel froze. For a moment, she didn't answer. Then, her eyes filled with tears. She quickly wiped them away, embarrassed. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "It's just been a really hard day." James didn't press, but his concern was obvious. He waited as she gave him his change. But then, unexpectedly, she said, "My baby's in the hospital. I shouldn't even be here right now. But if I miss one more shift, I'll lose my job." James felt his heart drop. He could see the pain written all over her face. "How old is your baby?" he asked. 18 months, she replied. "He's got pneumonia. The doctors say he'll be okay, but he needs medicine, and I can't afford all of it." James felt a deep ache in his chest. He remembered standing in that same helpless position years ago, when Laura was sick and he couldn't afford her treatment. He had begged, borrowed, and prayed, but still lost her in the end. "I'm so sorry," he said quietly. Rachel forced a smile again. "It's okay. Everyone has problems, right?" James wanted to say something more, but there was a line of people behind him. He took his bag and walked to the door. But halfway across the parking lot, he stopped. Something inside him wouldn't let him leave. He turned back. Inside the store, Rachel was still working, pretending to be fine. He walked to the customer service counter and asked to speak to the manager. A middle-aged man appeared, looking tired but kind. "Sir," James said, "I don't mean to intrude, but your cashier, Rachel, she's going through something serious. Her baby's in the hospital. Maybe she needs a little time off." The manager sighed. "I know, she told me, but company policy says after 3 absences, she's automatically terminated. I wish I could help her, but my hands are tied." James stood there for a moment, thinking. Then he nodded slowly. "All right, then I'll help her." He walked back to the counter where Rachel was scanning another customer's groceries. When she saw him return, she looked startled. "Did you forget something?" she asked. James smiled faintly. "Yeah, I forgot to ask how much your baby's medicine costs." Her eyes widened. "No, please, you don't have to." "How much?" he insisted. She hesitated, then whispered, around $200. James reached into his wallet. He didn't have much, barely enough to last the week. But he pulled out the cash he had saved for his car repair and placed it gently on the counter. "Here," he said, "buy the medicine." Rachel's eyes filled again. "I can't accept this," she said. "You can," he replied. "Because I know what it's like to watch someone you love suffer and feel like you can't do anything. Please, let me help." She covered her mouth, sobbing quietly. The store had fallen silent. Even the customers behind them watched in awe. After a moment, Rachel whispered, thank you so much." James gave her a small smile. "Just promise me one thing, take care of your little one. That's all I ask." He left the store, his heart heavy but somehow lighter than before. The next few days passed in a blur. James went to work, took care of his kids, and tried to forget about the encounter. But one afternoon, as he was picking up Emma and Noah from school, he received a call from an unknown number. "Hello," he answered. "Hi, is this Mr. Parker?" "Yes, who's this?" "This is Rachel, the cashier from the grocery store. I just wanted to tell you, my baby's okay. He's getting better. The doctors said the medicine worked." James smiled, relief washing over him. "That's wonderful news. I also wanted to tell you," Rachel continued, her voice trembling, "that I quit my job. I found something better, something where I can spend more time with my son. And I could do it because of you." James was silent for a moment, trying to find the right words. "You didn't owe me anything," he said softly. "I just did what anyone should do." "No," Rachel said, her voice firm now. "Most people wouldn't have cared. You did, and I'll never forget that." Months passed. Winter turned to spring, and life slowly found its rhythm again. James continued working hard, still missing Laura but learning to smile more each day. One morning, he went to the same grocery store to pick up a few things. When he reached the counter, a familiar face greeted him, but this time, it wasn't behind the register. Rachel stood there in a new uniform, one with a manager's badge. "James," she exclaimed, smiling brightly. "I was hoping I'd see you again." He blinked in surprise. "Rachel, you work here again?" "Yes," she said proudly. "They offered me a management position. I guess the district supervisor heard about what happened that night. They wanted someone who truly cared about people." James laughed softly. "Well, I'd say they made the right choice." Rachel smiled and looked behind her, where a small child was sitting in a stroller, laughing and playing with a toy car. "That's my son," she said. "His name's Caleb. He's healthy now, and he wanted to meet the man who helped save his life." James knelt beside the stroller and smiled at the little boy. Caleb giggled and reached out his hand. James shook it gently. "Hey, buddy," he said. "You've got a strong mom." Rachel's eyes shimmered. "And I'll always tell him about the kind man who reminded me that angels sometimes walk this earth in ordinary clothes." James smiled softly, not knowing what to say. He simply nodded, his eyes misting over. As he left the store that day, he thought about how one small act of kindness had created a ripple he never expected. Because sometimes, it's not the grand gestures that change lives. It's the quiet moments, the simple acts of compassion, that leave the deepest marks on our hearts. And for James Parker, that night reminded him of something his wife used to say, "When you give from the heart, you never lose anything. You only make room for more love." As he walked back to his truck, the sun breaking through the clouds, James felt something he hadn't felt in a long time, peace. This was Heart of the Guardians. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who believes that kindness still exists. Subscribe for more stories that heal, inspire, and remind us that even the smallest light can change the darkest night.